Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we take your sources, pull out the most important bits of knowledge and insight, and tailor it just for you, our listener. We're coming to you from BookCast FM, where we're bringing books to life one cast at a time. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a book that's definitely stirred things up and honestly helped a lot of people figure out modern life. That's Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos. Our goal today, to unpack these rules, see what they're really about, and understand how they might, offer a path to being better informed about things like personal responsibility, finding meaning, and just dealing with life's messiness.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is how Peterson pulls it all together. You've got ancient wisdom sitting right next to, modern scientific research, plus these really personal stories and cultural analysis, too. It's definitely dense, intellectual, sometimes feels a bit like a sermon, maybe, which is why it hits so hard for some people, and maybe why it's polarizing for others. But fundamentally, it's these 12 practical ideas, right? Principles to help find some meaning, some purpose when things feel chaotic.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. It sounds like he's drawing from some, pretty diverse places. I mean, I've even heard people mention lobsters in connection with this book.
Oh, definitely. The lobsters are in there. He pulls heavily from Judeo-Christian stories, evolutionary biology, that's where the lobsters come in, political psychology, Greek philosophy, even literature, writers like Dostoevsky and Nietzsche. The basic idea, the worldview driving it, seems to be that life involves suffering. That's kind of a given. But the antidote, if you like, is taking on responsibility, aiming for moral integrity. That's where Peterson suggests we find meaning, redemption, purpose.
Okay, so before we hit the rules one by one, what are the big underlying themes, the main currents running through the whole book?
Good question. If you zoom out, you see these key struggles playing out. First, there's order versus chaos. Life is this constant dance between structure, the known, and then uncertainty, the unknown, the potential. Then, a huge one, responsibility as the source of meaning. He argues it's not about chasing happiness per se, but about embracing responsibility. That's what gives life weight, significance. Truthfulness and integrity are absolutely central too, crucial for you as an individual, but also for a healthy society. He also talks about hierarchy and competence, often drawing on biology for that. And of course, discipline and self-improvement are woven throughout. We'll also touch on parenting, upbringing, and his interesting take on myths and religion as sources of deep archetypal wisdom.
Wow, okay, that definitely sets the stage. Let's jump into rule number one then. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Now, I gotta admit, my first thought was just, posture advice, like my mom used to tell me. But it's deeper, isn't it? What's really going on here?
It really is much deeper. It's not just about how you physically hold yourself, although that's part of it. It's more of a metaphor for how you face the world, how you engage with challenges. And yeah, this is where the lobsters come in. He uses them as an example to explain dominance hierarchies in nature. Their posture, which is influenced by serotonin levels, literally signals their status, their readiness. Defeated lobsters slouch. Victorious ones stand tall.
Huh. So it's biological.
He argues there's a biological parallel in humans. How you carry yourself physically sends signals to others, and crucially back to your own brain. It affects your neurochemistry. So the actionable takeaway isn't just don't slouch, it's act with confidence, especially when things are tough. Adopt the posture of someone ready to face things, because it genuinely changes how others see you and how you feel about yourself.
So the nugget here is that it's a physical and psychological stance, a way to meet chaos.
Exactly. Peterson puts it quite powerfully. To stand up straight with your shoulders back is to accept the terrible responsibility of life with eyes wide open. It really sets the foundation for everything else. Life's chaotic, hierarchical. Okay, face it with order, discipline, courage. Start with how you hold yourself.
Okay, rule two. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. This one. It can feel a bit backward, can't it? Why do we often treat pets or even friends better than ourselves when it comes to basic care?
It's a really interesting point he makes. Peterson suggests it often comes down to self-worth. People might not feel deserving of help, maybe because of shame, past experiences, self-criticism. He even brings up research on things like medical compliance. People who wouldn't miss giving their dog its heart medication, but they'll forget or skip their own prescriptions, even vital ones.
Wow, so we value others more?
Or maybe we just feel the weight of responsibility for others more acutely. But his point is, you are responsible for yourself. You have value. So the practical idea is, make choices for yourself about your health, your boundaries, your goals. with the same care and seriousness you'd apply if you were looking after someone you truly loved and felt responsible for.
It's like applying that external care inward. Makes sense.
Precisely. He really drives home your inherent importance. He says something like, you are important to other people as much as to yourself. You have some vital role to play. It builds right on Rule 1, doesn't it? Stand tall, accept responsibility, including the responsibility to value and care for yourself.
All right, Rule 3. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Seems pretty straightforward, good advice. But life gets complicated, right? Obligations, history with people. It's not always easy to just cut ties.
No, it's definitely not easy. But Peterson really emphasizes how much your social circle shapes you, your values, your habits, even where you end up. He warns specifically about what he calls the rescue fantasy. Trying to endlessly help or fix someone who isn't actually willing to change, or maybe even drags you down with them.
Yeah, I think we've all seen that happen, or maybe done it.
Right. And he frames friendship as a kind of moral choice. Relationships should be reciprocal. They should lift you up, challenge you in good ways, not just drain you or enable destructive patterns. So the actionable thing for you listening is to take a hard look at your friendships. Ask honestly, do these people genuinely support my well-being and growth? And then have the courage, maybe with compassion, but still firmness, to distance yourself from those who consistently pull you into chaos or reinforce your worst impulses.
That requires some serious self-reflection. And courage, like you said, choosing your influences.
Exactly. He says, if you surround yourself with people who support your upward aim, they will not tolerate your cynicism and destructiveness. See, I get next back to Rule 2. Once you start valuing yourself, treating yourself like someone worth helping, you naturally become more selective about who gets your time and energy.
Okay, so we're building this foundation. Posture, self-care, positive relationships. It's very individual focused at the start, which leads nicely into Rule 4. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Man, in this age of social media, this one feels critical. That comparison trap is everywhere.
It really is. And Peterson pinpoints how modern life just constantly throws other people's curated successes in your face, right? Which almost inevitably breeds feelings of inadequacy, maybe envy, resentment, discouragement. The problem, he argues, is it's a rigged game. Everyone's situation is unique, different starting points, different struggles, different luck. Comparing is often meaningless and usually harmful.
So what's the alternative? How do you measure progress?
His answer is simple, but powerful. Focus inward and backward. Look at your progress. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. The practical advice: track your own improvements, even tiny ones. Did you do something slightly better today than yesterday? Great. Celebrate that. And maybe, consciously limit exposure to things that trigger that pointless envy.
He uses a pretty stark example for this one too, doesn't he?
Yeah, the Cain and Abel story from the Bible. He interprets it as a cautionary tale about how corrosive envy can be when it goes unchecked, how it can lead to bitterness and even destruction. The antidote, he suggests, is gratitude for what you have and a relentless focus on your path, your improvements, step by step. It keeps building that theme of internal focus, self-development, which then logically flows into how we influence the next generation.
Which brings us to Rule 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Okay, this one definitely sounds provocative, especially given some modern parenting philosophies. Is he saying be harsh? What's the real point?
It is provocative phrasing, for sure. But it's not really about being harsh for its own sake. It's about clarity. It's about boundaries. He argues that parents who avoid discipline, maybe because they fear conflict or they want to be their kid's friend above all, they actually do their children a disservice. Why? Because those kids often end up poorly socialized. They struggle to follow rules, respect others, handle frustration, things they need to function well out in the world.
So discipline is actually helpful, loving even.
That's exactly his argument. Discipline, delivered calmly and fairly, is an act of love because it prepares children for reality. Parents, in his view, are society's first representatives, teaching the rules of the game. So the actionable idea for parents, or anyone guiding kids, is correct behavior that's genuinely problematic: aggression, disrespect, serious defiance early on. Use the minimum necessary intervention, be calm, but be consistent. Have clear rules.
It's about equipping them for social life, not just making your own life easier in the moment.
Precisely. He says parents are the arbiters of society. They teach children to behave so that other people will like them. That sounds maybe blunt, but the point is about social integration and future well-being. He often shares examples from his clinical work of kids rejected by peers because of behaviors that frankly, should have been addressed earlier by parents willing to set boundaries. It loops back to responsibility again, doesn't it? The responsibility of a parent. And it definitely sets up ideas about resilience, too.
Right. So we've gone from the self to friends to parenting, and now Rule 6 takes a big leap. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Wow, that feels like a direct challenge to, well, a lot of online discourse, maybe. To blaming external factors.
It's a huge challenge. This chapter gets pretty heavy. It tackles suffering, evil, nihilism, the sense that nothing matters.
Yeah.
Peterson's argument is essentially, before you try to fix the world's problems, before you launch into grand critiques of society or politics or whatever, you have a moral duty to sort out your own life first. Get your own house in order. What does that mean? Stop doing things you know are wrong. Address the chaos in your own affairs. Clean up your own messes, literally and figuratively.
Why? What's the connection between, say, cleaning your room and criticizing the government?
He argues that personal dishonesty, avoidance, and neglect those small acts of chaos in your own life, they create fertile ground for resentment and bitterness. And that resentment, scaled up, can fuel destructive ideologies. He draws lines between personal failings and historical horrors like totalitarianism, arguing that huge evils often grow from tiny, individual refusals to take responsibility and tell the truth. So the takeaway is pretty stark. Audit your life, ruthlessly. Start small, clean your room, organize your schedule. Apologize for things you've done wrong. Pay your debts, fix the things you can actually control. Then maybe you'll have the clarity and integrity to think about bigger issues. As he puts it, don't blame capitalism, the radical left, or the iniquity of your enemies. Don't reorganize the state until you have ordered your own experience.
That puts a lot of onus back on the individual, facing your own contribution to the chaos.
Absolutely. He connects it to characters like Raskolnikov in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, showing how resentment and a rejection of personal responsibility can lead down dark paths. This rule really lays a moral groundwork for finding meaning. It's deeply tied to truth, which comes up next.
Yeah, that flows perfectly into Rule 7. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. This feels like it gets right to the heart of the book's philosophy, right? The difference between a quick fix and real purpose.
It really does. It's central. Peterson draws this sharp contrast. Expediency is doing what's easy, what's convenient, what feels good right now. Avoiding conflict, taking shortcuts, indulging impulses. Meaning, on the other hand, is found in embracing responsibility, often involves sacrifice, and requires confronting difficulty head-on. It's about aligning your actions with your deepest values, even when it's hard.
And he argues expediency ultimately leads to more suffering.
Yes, that's the paradox. Taking the easy way out now often creates bigger problems down the road, leading to a life that feels hollow, meaningless, maybe even full of regret. Pursuing what's meaningful, even though it often involves struggle and sacrifice in the short term, is what builds resilience, character, and a life that feels significant. He even argues that voluntary sacrifice is the very basis of civilization. So the actionable thought here is to constantly ask yourself, is this action I'm taking meaningful? Or is it just expedient? Am I aiming for long-term value or just short-term comfort? And then consciously choose meaning.
It's like choosing the harder path now for a better destination later.
Nothing like that. Because meaning is what we do to buttress ourselves against the tragedy of life.
Yeah.
It's the thing that sustains you through the inevitable suffering. It brings up Cain and Abel again here too. Abel's sacrifice was meaningful, accepted. Cain's was expedient, rejected, leading Cain down that path of resentment. It highlights choosing the right process, the right aim, not just envying the outcome. And this commitment to meaning directly requires, well, truth.
Rule 8. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Okay, seems simple, don't lie. Got it. But what's the deeper layer Peterson adds here?
It goes way beyond just avoiding obvious falsehoods. It's about a fundamental alignment with reality. It's about speaking and acting in ways that are congruent with what you genuinely believe and perceive to be true, even when it's uncomfortable or costly. Why? Because lies, even seemingly small white lies or lies of omission, distort your perception of reality. They corrupt your relationships. They undermine your own integrity, your soul, you could say. Over time, this accumulation of untruth leads to personal chaos, psychological problems, and fractured societies. Truth, for Peterson, isn't just a nice idea. It's a vital, creative, redemptive force. It brings order out of chaos.
So it's an active process, not just passive avoidance of lying.
Very much so. The practical advice is twofold. First, stop saying things you know to be false. Just stop, even if it avoids immediate conflict. Second, actively practice speaking your truth. Articulate what you really think and feel as accurately as you can, Maybe use journaling or therapy or careful conversation to figure out what that truth even is.
Because untruths build up and create a false reality?
Exactly, and that false reality is fragile and ultimately destructive. He says to tell the truth is to bring the most habitable reality into being. Truth builds edifices that can stand 1,000 years. He points to historical examples like Alexander Solzhenitsyn documenting the lies that underpinned the Soviet system in the Gulag archipelago, showing how societal untruth leads to unimaginable suffering. So this commitment to truth is essential for self-respect, for genuine connection with others, and it naturally flows into how we should listen.
Right. Rule 9. Assume that the person you're listening to might know something you don't. In our world, where everyone seems to have an instant opinion and debates are often shouting matches, real listening feels rare. What's Peterson's take?
He frames it as an act of profound humility and as a strategy for learning. So often, he points out, we listen merely to find flaws in the other person's argument or to formulate our own clever response. We listen to win. Rule 9 urges the opposite. Enter conversations with the genuine assumption that the other person, anyone, might have knowledge, insight, or a piece of the puzzle that you're missing, regardless of their status or background.
So it's not just being polite, it's actually a way to get smarter.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you want to learn something new? The practical step is to suspend judgment while listening. Ask genuine, open-ended questions. Try summarizing what you think they said. So are you saying that? To make sure you actually understood. Be a student in the conversation.
That requires setting your own ego aside a bit.
A lot, maybe. He talks about how conversation is how we organize our thoughts. People organize their brains with conversation. If they don't have anyone to tell their story to, they lose their minds. He draws on his clinical experience here, too. Clients often finding their own solutions just by talking things through with someone who's truly listening attentively, without judgment. There's therapeutic power in being heard. So it complements truth-telling. Rule 8 beautifully. Speak your truth, but listen with humility. And that leads to the how of speaking.
Rule 10. Be precise in your speech. This sounds like it could solve so many problems in relationships, at work, everywhere. Vague language causes so much trouble, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Peterson argues that ambiguity, vagueness, refusing to clearly define things, it allows chaos to creep in and fester. When you don't clearly name a problem, whether it's in your relationship or in your own mind, it becomes this amorphous monster. It can't be grasped, can't be solved, it just looms. Precise speech, on the other hand, is like shining a light. It's an act of will, bringing clarity and order. It defines the boundaries of the problem, making it manageable.
So being vague is actually kind of irresponsible. It lets the chaos win.
That's the implication, yes. The actionable advice is name things. Specifically, if you have a problem, define it as clearly and concretely as possible. If you have a goal, articulate it precisely. In conversations, especially difficult ones, try to address the specific issue, not resort to vague accusations like you always or you never. Be precise about the behavior and its impact.
Because otherwise you just end up fighting about everything and nothing gets resolved.
Exactly. He uses that example of couples fighting. Often the real issue is specific, but gets buried under layers of imprecise emotional language. Precision clarifies, de-escalates, allows for actual problem solving. And he puts it starkly again. If you don't say what you think, then you kill your unborn self. Meaning, your potential, your clarity, your ability to shape reality gets lost in the fog of imprecise language. This builds directly on truth, Rule 8, and listening, Rule 9. Truth requires precision, and good listening helps you understand precisely what needs to be addressed.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Ground, internal order, relationships, truth, communication. Now, Rule 11 feels like a bit of a curveball. Do not bother children when they are skateboarding. It's so specific. What's the bigger picture here?
It is specific and memorable, but it's a metaphor, of course. It's really a chapter about risk, courage, competence, and resilience. And it's also a critique of overprotection. He uses skateboarding, an activity that involves risk, practice, failure, mastery, as an example of how particularly boys maybe develop competence and test boundaries. His argument is that when we try to shield children, and ourselves really, from all risk, from all potential harm or discomfort, we actually weaken them. We prevent them from developing the skills and the psychological toughness needed to navigate the world.
So letting kids take reasonable risk is actually good for them, builds character.
That's the core idea. It fosters independence, problem-solving skills, confidence that comes from actually overcoming challenges, not just being told they're great. He often links this to developing traditionally masculine virtues like courage and competence, arguing that society sometimes pathologizes this kind of healthy risk-taking. The takeaway isn't let kids do wildly dangerous things, obviously. It's Allow space for exploration, for testing limits, for reasonable risk. Don't bubble wrap life. Let them fall down and figure out how to get back up. That applies to adults learning new skills too, by the way.
Let them confront a manageable dose of chaos to learn how to handle it.
Precisely. As he says, if you interfere with children when they are skateboarding, you interfere with them when they are testing the boundaries of life. He even recounts a specific instance in Toronto where officials tried to ban skateboarding in a spot where kids were clearly engaged, learning, pushing themselves, all in the name of safety. He sees that as misguided overreach that stifles necessary development. It circles back to responsibility and discipline again, but from a different angle, the need for voluntary struggle, not enforced, sterile safety, to find meaning and strength.
Which brings us to the final rule. Rule 12. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. After some pretty intense rules, this one sounds almost gentle, unexpectedly tender. What's the message here?
It is tender and deeply personal. This chapter is really a meditation on suffering, particularly unavoidable suffering, and finding moments of grace amidst the pain. Peterson shares quite openly the story of his daughter Michaela's severe, lifelong health struggles, the immense pain and uncertainty his family endured. It's all heartbreaking stuff. The cat, this small, unexpected encounter with something simple, maybe beautiful, maybe just present, becomes a metaphor. It represents the need to remain open to fleeting moments of peace, beauty, or connection, even when life feels overwhelmingly difficult or tragic.
So when things are terrible, notice the small good things.
Yes, it's about acknowledging the hardship, the chaos, the suffering, not denying it, but also staying alert to the small pockets of order, beauty, and kindness that still exist. It's a form of mindfulness, maybe. A way to endure when problems can't be immediately solved. The actionable idea is practice noticing. Even in dark times, look for moments of beauty in the mundane, moments of connection, however small. Accept that some suffering is part of life, but don't let it blind you to everything else.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of confronting chaos, you need moments of softness, presence.
Beautifully put, yes. Strength and order need to be balanced with that tenderness, that ability to appreciate the present moment, even if it's imperfect. A key quote here is, sometimes when people are hurting, they need to know the world still contains beauty. The raw honesty about his daughter's illness really grounds the whole book. It shows that these aren't just abstract principles. They're forged in the face of real-world suffering and resilience. It gives a kind of emotional weight to the whole journey through the rules. So we pull back and look at the whole picture of Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Well, it's essentially a framework for dealing with the inherent suffering and chaos of existence. The core message seems to be find meaning not by avoiding difficulty, but by voluntarily confronting it through personal responsibility, through speaking and seeking truth, and by actively trying to bring order to your own life and, by extension, the world around you.
So for you listening, what does this all boil down to? These rules, whether you buy into every single idea or not, they really push you to look inward first, right? Before blaming everything outside yourself. They call you to aim for competence, for integrity, to take responsibility for the small patch of the world you can actually influence, starting with yourself. And crucially, to find purpose and even beauty, even when life is tough, which it often is. It's a call to action, really. For self-improvement, sure, but also for engaging courageously with reality as it is.
And it leaves us with a pretty potent question, I think. In a world that feels increasingly complex, maybe overwhelming, with so much information, so many competing ideas, how much of our own struggle, our own suffering, maybe comes from ignoring some of these fundamental aspects of, well, human nature, the need for discipline, for truth, for responsibility.
That is definitely something to think about long after we finish here. A powerful thought to mull over. And that brings us to the end of another deep dive. We really hope this exploration of Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life gave you some valuable insights, maybe some actionable ideas. Remember, the best way to really grapple with these ideas is to read the book yourself. You can dive much deeper that way. We've put a link in the description where you can find it and support the author. Thanks so much for joining us here on BookCast FM, where we're always bringing books to life one cast at a time. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.